Here is a quick summary of Plato's theory of the city, the soul, and their virtues from Republic, Book 4. There are three parts to the ideal city, says Plato. These are the rulers, the soldiers, or auxiliaries, and the common people. The rulers rule over the city. They make policy decisions that are in the interest of the entire city as a whole. The soldiers defend the city, they defeat its enemies, and they keep public order. They're like a police force for the city. And the common people engage in commerce and the regular business of life. They are by far the largest and most numerous class in the ideal city, and their daily affairs constitute most of the life of the city. Now, Plato says there are four virtues that are needed to make the city truly excellent, to allow it to fulfill its function as a city in the best possible way. These four virtues are wisdom, courage, moderation, and justice. In the ideal city, wisdom is found in the rulers. The rulers must be wise in order to accomplish their job of ruling over the city well. Courage is found in the soldiers. They need courage in order to perform their role in the overall life of the ideal city. In order to do their job well, they require courage. Moderation is found in the common people. They must be moderate in their desires and in pursuing their own private goods. But, says Plato, the rulers and the soldiers must be moderate as well in their own way. And so moderation as a virtue applies to all three classes of people in the ideal city. Justice is the fourth virtue, and justice is not located in one particular class of the city. No one specializes in justice. Rather, says Plato, justice is a virtue that is in the city as a whole. Justice in the city is a correct relationship between the parts of the city, in which each part does its own job, and no part tries to do any other part's job. Specifically for the ideal city, this means that the rulers rule over the whole city with the cooperation of the soldiers, and the common people obey the dictates of the rulers. The soldiers also obey the rulers in helping to govern the common people. According to Plato, there are also three parts of the human soul that correspond to the three classes of people in the ideal city. These are reason, spirit, and appetite. The job of reason is to rule over the entire soul. Reason is able to weigh all the evidence and to make choices that are in the soul's long-term best interest. Reason here corresponds to the rulers of the ideal city. The spirit fights for the soul externally and internally, helps to keep order. It is the seat of the emotions and of our reactions of pride and shame. The spirited part of the soul corresponds to the soldiers in the ideal city. And lastly, the appetite part of the soul is our desire for food and drink, sleep and sex, and other material goods. The appetite knows no internal limits. It will take as much as it can get, unless it is restrained by some outside force or lack of supply. The appetite corresponds to the common people in the ideal city. So let's look at the four virtues in the human soul according to Plato. They are the same four virtues: wisdom, courage, moderation, and justice. Wisdom is the specific virtue of the rational part of the soul. Reason needs wisdom in order to perform its function well in the context of the human soul. Courage is the virtue of the spirited part of the soul. Moderation, the virtue of the appetite part of the soul, but also reason and spirit in their own way. And justice in the soul is similar to justice in the ideal city. It is a correct relationship between the parts of the soul, in which each part does its own job and does what it is by nature best suited to do in the context of the soul as a whole. Specifically, in the soul, justice means that reason rules over appetite with the cooperation of spirit to govern and restrain the appetites and direct them towards the good of the entire person. Appetite, in its turn, should accept the restrictions that reason and spirit place upon it. Notice that this vision of justice is much less concerned with fairness, with each part getting what it deserves, and rather with conformity to nature, with each part doing what it is naturally best suited to do, with knowing its place and its contribution to the good of the whole soul, and staying in its lane, so to speak. Knowing your place and fulfilling your role that is given to you by nature seems to be a key part of this vision of justice. Lastly, let's look at injustice in the city and in the soul, according to Plato. Injustice in the city is a situation in which a lower part of the city rules in place of the rulers. So if the soldiers were to take over and try to run the city themselves, the city would be unjust, it would be badly run. And the reason for this is that soldiers lack the wisdom that is necessary to make good policy decisions in the long-term interests of the entire city. And similarly, if the common people were to overthrow the rulers and establish a democracy, Plato says this would also be an unjust city in which people who lack the necessary wisdom would be trying to make decisions and would inevitably make the wrong decisions, decisions that would lead to the loss of the goods of the city. Injustice in the soul, being very similar to the city, is a case in which appetite or spirit rules the entire soul. If somebody is thinking with their appetite or with their emotions, they're not using reason to instruct and govern these things. They are behaving unjustly. And this is going to lead, according to Plato, to misery instead of happiness for the individual, just like for the city. So that's my quick summary of the parts of the city, the parts of the soul, and the way the virtues figure into them from Republic Book 4 by Plato. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.